You heard Amy Klobuchar talk about comparing what's happening online with social media platforms with Boeing. And she said it. When a door fell off a plane midair, all the MAX 9s got grounded. Kids are on social media platforms every day and their lives are on the line. Is the reason nothing is happening because these companies have giant lobbying efforts and these lawmakers are all talk, and at the end of the day, they don't do anything?
Well, I think it's you're making a very good point there, Steph. Yes, I mean, there's been enormous amounts of lobbying efforts. There's an enormous apparatus that surrounds every one of those companies and the entire industry to basically shape our sort of optics around what they do. And they've always been great at saying, the vast majority of people's experiences are positive on our platform. And these few cases in which something unfortunate happens to a child or anyone else is sort of an edge case. But what we saw today was that edge case put front and center. The optics were just endlessly bad for these social media CEOs. At one point, the Snapchat CEO, Evan Spiegelman, is sitting there testifying, and there is a dad a few rows behind him holding up a photograph of his own dead son who died from an overdose from drugs that were supposedly procured on Snapchat. So there was no sense here that there was a sort of an edge case idea. The optics were entirely about this stuff, and as a result, you couldn't really, these CEOs could not fall back on their platitudes. At one point, Mark Zuckerberg tried to say something about, there's this very, positive experience for a lot of teen creators. He was booed and hissed by that audience, many of whom are the parents, the bereaved parents of lost children. And so, it was really amazing to see them have to sit in this one small slice of their operations that have had such terrible effects to everybody in that room.
I think we have that soundbite of Mark Zuckerberg now. Let's play it.
There's families of victims here today. Have you apologized to the victims? Would you like to do so now? Well, they're here. You're on national television. Would you like now to apologize to the victims who have been harmed by your product? Show them the pictures. Would you like to apologize for what you've done to these good people?
I'm sorry for everything that you've all gone through. It's terrible. No one should have to go through the things that your families have suffered. And this is why we invest so much and are going to continue doing industry-leading efforts to make sure that no one has to go through the types of things that your families have had to suffer.
Alex, these are families who have dead teenagers. And his response is how they're investing. You know this man. You know Facebook. What do you make of this?
Well, I think it was a very difficult day for Mark Zuckerberg and for the rest of the CEOs. There are people at these companies who dedicate their lives to safety work, to security work, and those of us on that side have to kind of deal with the reality of the downside of the platforms every day, right? So we go to conferences like the Crimes Against Children conference. I've been to testifying in trials and been to hearings with victims, but that's not something the CEOs normally get exposed to. And so I think it probably was an eye-opening moment for him, because generally somebody like Mark gets to only experience kind of the positive feedback of people who enjoy the product or who complain about little things. They don't have to see the fact that, like Jacob said, this is a numerically small number of people for whom there's a horrible, horrible outcome from using social media.
Jake, let's talk about who is not in the room. YouTube, Twitch, Apple. These are major players. Where were they?
Yeah, it's interesting. I would say, YouTube has always in our world, in the tech world, been this huge 800-pound gorilla, right? It is the platform across which so much information moves. And they have been largely absent from these sorts of conversations. And famously, once upon a time, their former CEO was pretty hostile to the idea that there was any sort of like reputation work that needed to be done. She was sort of famously, sort of immune to that line of argument from the people like Alex who worked for her. So a very interesting thing to see those folks all missing. I think what we're seeing here, though, Steph, that I think is so interesting is because the optics were so bad today, because we are on the verge of there being, at least 5 pieces of legislation around child exploitation and sexualized material and all kinds of the dangerous stuff that kids get exposed to on these platforms, and because there's nothing more powerful, I think, in sort of American life than a bereaved parent, right? We've seen this with Mothers Against Drunk Driving. We've seen this in the lawsuits that brought down Alex Jones, right? When parents lose children, they are so dogged in pursuing a remedy to that. I wonder if, at this time where we've gotten, we've seen the same sort of arguments go around and around and around. I wonder if there's some traction emerging here. Certainly, the optics today suggest that to me.
Callan, now that AI is here, is it turbocharging all these problems?
It's absolutely turbocharging these problems, especially with children. I mean, we're seeing a rise in deepfake technology. My good colleague, Kat Tenbarge, has been reporting on this. And the wealth of deepfakes, whether that's from celebrities or, whether children are experiencing it themselves, seeing themselves in deepfakes. This technology is so accessible. And there's a wealth of legislation now that this hearing is happening with the backdrop. And, we have legislation that's just come out to hold people who make deepfakes accountable, and also to give people who are the victims of deepfakes a legal path forward to getting sort of retribution for what has happened to them. We're also seeing a wealth of bipartisan legislation coming forward. We see the Stop CSAM Act, the COPA 2.0, COSA, and also at the state level, we're actually seeing a big influx of legislation that's meant to protect children online. So there's a lot across the board, but definitely AI is going to be something that has to be legislated, that needs regulation, and just one law might not be enough to do it.
Alex, what do you think?
There's you heard, there's 5 big pieces of legislation in Congress. One of them's already been passed out of the Senate. So the folks who held this hearing at least did their job on that. It's called the Report Act. It's the least controversial of the bills. It fixes a number of very important technical issues about the relationship between these companies and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, NCMEC, which is the clearinghouse for all child exploitation reports and it makes a bunch of changes that are really important. It is dead in the House. And so a lot of this comes down to the fact that Congress, while there's theoretically bipartisan support, in reality, the House is doing nothing other than arguing over tax bills and not passing immigration and such. And so until the House starts passing legislation that I believe in this case passed unanimously out of the Senate, we're not going to have a lot of action.
That's exactly what I want to close on, because today sort of felt hopeful or exciting because it appeared bipartisan, right? Lindsey Graham made this great argument about why victims should be allowed to sue these platforms. Watch this.
The representative from South Carolina, Mr. Guffey's son, got caught up in a sex extortion ring in Nigeria using Instagram. He was shaken down, paid money. That wasn't enough, and he killed himself using Instagram. Do you think he should be allowed to sue you?
I think that they can sue us.
Well, I think he should, and he can't.
All right. Lindsey Graham makes that statement. People are going right on. But let's talk about how he votes. Because in 2005, when he had a chance to allow Americans to sue gun manufacturers, he voted to give those manufacturers immunity instead. So what do you actually expect to come out of this? Jake?
I think, Steph, that one thing that has in the past always been very frustrating to those of us who would love to sit across from these tech CEOs and ask them tough questions has been the sort of the performative nature of it, right? You've got these senators up there, and once you turn the cameras and the lights on, everybody's just performing. There isn't really an exchange of ideas, and questions are asked, but they don't really allow them to answer. On the other hand, Senator Klobuchar got applause. Lindsey Graham got applause from a room full of people. And I know that this, in the scheme of things, probably doesn't seem like it makes a difference. But I think the experience of being applauded for the positions and the statements that they were taking and making today, I don't know. I just wonder if these senators are going to come out of this and be like, there might be some hay to make here in a way that maybe it hasn't occurred to them before. I think until now, everyone thought of this as just sort of an abstract thing and we can't come together on it. I don't know. It felt to me like they may have taken something away from this that might serve as a fuel for some kind of action down the line. I don't think we're going to see it right away, but it feels to me over the years I've been covering this stuff that there's something building here. I just don't quite know what it is yet, Steph.
Really push what remains of the old spark.
So who's the infect? You?
What? The Autobots cannot protect you. They were defeated on our world, and we will defeat them here.
Ambush was just a diversion!
Security teams bring up. Ravage, he's already inside. Deeds! Give me an update on that reserve. Boss readiness. What was his name?
Evac, sir.
Right, evac.
She's right in front.
We are facing a heavy sustained attack. They appear to be after the All-Star craft.
General! General!